Okay, B'siyata Dishmaya, Perek Lamed Aleph. So before we start, in the last two prokim, so the Heilige Tanya taught us about humbling oneself, and specifically the meditation and the thinking that a person is meant to be doing in order to humble himself, in order to get rid of and to break the timtum alev, to destroy the shell of that timtum alev, the spiritual insensitivity which causes him not to feel the geschmack of Yiddishkeit. Now we continue over here, something very, very important, and that is we need a person to be positive. We need a person to be happy. And at the end of the day, if a person is busy thinking about all his averas and thinking about all of the things that he's a nothing and he's a whatever, it may lead to sadness and even depression. And the Baal HaTanya doesn't want it to do that because it doesn't have to be that way, and it's not healthy, of course, and we really want a person to be besimcha, as we will explain. So let's go. V'hinei, av im, even if a person, Taka took, exactly all the eights that the Baal HaTanya has been talking about for the last few prokim, is to really be mispoinen and think about all the things that he's been telling us in order to break ourselves so we be able to develop the Geschmack in Yiddishkeit. Kisha ushtayim, and hear this, an hour or two, liyos, kinemichas ruach v'lev nishba, in order to, get this low sort of spiritual self and his broken heart. He's going to end up, he could be upset, sad, depressed, down, whatever. Don't worry about it. Even though we know that sadness is generally associated with klipas noiga, which means it's the opposite of anything that's got kedusha to it. However, he's going to tell us it can still have a positive side to it. Key. Which means that simcha really belongs in a mokim kodesh. The shechina can only rest in a place of real true simcha. That means if it comes, if you remember we discussed this all the way back, that klipas noiga has good parts and bad parts, and it all depends how you utilize them. So what the Baal HaTanya over here is telling us, and over here in Lamed Aleph, is that if you're able to utilize, and the sadness is coming from the good part of the noiga, meaning it's handled correctly, then it will have a positive outcome. Okay? Remember, klipa is a person's self. It's the person's I, right? So that's basically you think about your shortcomings and all the things that you're not good and all the things that you don't do or should be doing but not doing, whatever. It's going to lead to that sadness, that depression. That's why it comes from the klipas noiga, but you have the ability to uplift it, and if it's utilized properly, it can be very, very good. Even Zukda Arizal, the worry about a person's averis is only proper at the time of vidoy. Not at the time of davening, not at the time when you're sitting learning Gemara or any other Torah that you're learning. Then you're meant to be besimcha. That's not the right time to be thinking about all the averis that you've been doing. In other words, the only way to sort of subdue the Sitra Achra is basically to put the identical energy back into it. Now this is going to give us numerous examples, which I am not going to go into in details of each and every one of them because it's a sugya. Each one is a sugya b'fnei atzmai. Kamay Rabbi Zenuzal, mineu bei ibo l'shadya bei narga. Which basically means talking about avadya, whatever, the whole sugya. Look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin. It's a kavaldiga, amazing, beautiful sugya. But really, what those words mean is from the forest itself comes the handle that makes the axe to cut down all the trees of the forest. So in other words, it's ironic, right? Now, you cut down a forest. How do you cut down a tree? You take the wood that you get from the tree, and you put an axe to put the barrels on top of it, and then you chop it down. So from the very tree is what causes the tree to be destroyed. So he's telling us you need to put the same energy that you got out in. Or that means the snake sometimes meets one of its own, and that's what it is, because that's how it gets killed, right? It's lahavdil when you have vaccines and these sorts of things. I'm not getting into if you should or should not, but those, whatever it is. But what is a vaccine? Be'etzem. It's putting the illness in. That's what it is, and that kills it when it needs to come up. So that's what he's telling us over here. Or there is a profit from sadness. Well, he's telling us that there can be something good that comes out of it, just like we've just given examples of actual positive things that come out of those things that seem to be negative. As we're going to explain later on, we will see that there is a type of simcha that can actually be produced from the sadness if it's utilized and directed in the right way. Behemes. Ein lev nishba meriras hanefesh al v'chuka me'ara pnei Hashem v'slabshusa b'sitra achon nikorim b'shem atzvus klal b'lashon HaKodesh. That means, if you have a situation of a broken heart or even a bitter neshama on the very fact that he's so distant from the Rabbeinu Shalom, and it's like, so to speak, dressed in the Sitra Achra, right? It's basically caused a depression. Atzvus, it's the lashon of depression. Lashon HaKodesh. Ki atzvus sheliboy metumtum ke'even. What's this atzvus? Atzvus means that your heart is metumtum, like a stone. And as your heart has completely been desensitized from anything geschmack, from any, life source or anything else, like a stone is nothing, this heart is completely void for vitality. It's like nothing to it. It's like a stone, dead. There's no life in the heart. But if you have the bitterness, we're not talking about atzvus over here. We've changed it. I'll tell you in a minute the difference. But if we have merirus v'leiv nishba adarabba, harayesh chayes beliboy l'spayel l'smarmer, rak shehi chayes b'bechnes gvur kadoshos, v'asemcha b'bechnes chasodim kelei kolol mishteyem, actually has both chesed and gevura. So what he's telling us over here is the reason why merirus is actually good and constructive is because unlike atzvus stems from the klipa, merirus is the energy, right? It's basically the energy holding the gevura, and the difference between merirus and atzvus is merirus is some kind of energy that basically urges a person to rectify the wrong that he has done. So if he's done wrong, there's a certain urge that he wants to fix it, he wants to do better. That's merirus. So if it's used constructively, it can lead to positivity and optimism, even though it comes from a negative place of thinking about averis and thinking about all the negativity. Whereas atzvus, for example, that's depression, because it's basically a feeling of despair, of giving up, lost hope, no shaykhus whatsoever. That's why we don't want it to linger. V'hinei. So let's do one last paragraph, and then Be'ez Hashem we shall continue. I'm not going to be able to finish the paragraph today, right? No, I'm not going to finish the paragraph today. Too much. So no, finish tomorrow, end the week for Yom Tov, fine. Otherwise, we're going to have a big break for Yom Tov. Sometimes a person, right? Normally we do stay away from gvura. That's what it is, because gvura is a very severe midah. It's a very severe emotion, right? We've got the 7 spheres, whatever, or we've got 10, whatever. But one of them is called gvura. Gvura is a very mightiness. It's a very severe type of emotion. But sometimes we need it in order to awaken the powers that need to come up and awaken and sweeten the din. And that's what something is saying over here. In a situation where the Nefesh HaBahamis seems to be steering the ship, the Yetzer Hara seems to be sholet on the guf, chas v'shalom, the only way to sweeten the din, literally means to change things, whatever it may be, is to basically awaken it from the source. The Gemara says in Brachos, right? The Gemara says, well, Al Yetzer Hara continues the Gemara, and then he brings Rigzu Ba'al Chator. The Gemara says whatever it may be. So Al Kaponim had this in Perach Test, by the way, that a person is meant to, so to speak, we spoke about the idea of screaming at Yetzer Hara, but Tanya mentioned Bahainu. Over here we're arousing the Gevura, we're arousing the anger against its impure counterpart. That's what we're doing, right? In other words, we've got the impulses of evil within us, and we're trying to ignite the Gevura, which is anger, which is normally not good, we don't want to utilize it. Here we're going to use it for our own benefit. And that is to be able to fight the other side. Because as the Baal Tanya explained, what we've been doing is we're trying to fight bad with bad, so to speak. And then that will equal good. Because like we said with the snake gets killed by something as poisonous as itself. Because that's the way the axe, comes from the wood and fells the tree. So it's the same thing over here. We need to arouse the anger, which is Gevura, because that's the shoirish of everything, and then we'll be able to fight the other side. Whenever you feel that your neshama needs it, when is the correct time and the best time for most people? He b'shashu otsev belav hachi memele da'alma oikach b'li shum siba. Let's say a person's anyway upset. He's sad, he's down, he's depressed. He's going through something. He lost money. He did a business deal that went sour. Things are not working out. He made plans for Shabbos, didn't happen. Whatever it may be, each to their own, right? So he's anyway a bit down. Tanya, that's the best time. Utilize that time to be able to, so to speak, arouse the negativity and fight the Yetzer Hara and scream at your Yetzer Hara and scream at the things that are bad inside you, so that you're anyway sad, so maybe you're not causing yourself to be sad and you're doing it with a positive reason inside. Azai Shasa Kosher, that's the best time. Hanal, on the Kaimah and then you become the Gemara that says La'olam Yargiz. Otherwise, what does that mean? The Gemara is saying La'olam Yargiz, Odom Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. How do you do that? So before Gemara, we don't do that. How do you do it? Over here. As he said, you bring out the bad, you scream at Yetzer Hara, you get angry at Yetzer Hara. How can you do this? How can you do this to me? How can you? And while you're already upset, that's the best time. Not only will it stop you from your Milad Alma sadness and depression and downness, but also will stop you from this as well. And again, since it's being done in a real way, it's going to lead to Simcha, as we'll get to tomorrow. But Hashem, the next paragraph is going to talk about how this is actually going to lead to Emes Simcha. Mitzvah Hashem will continue tomorrow.